Hello and welcome to my breakdown of the 53rd live letter. This letter from a producer live took place today, the 7th of August, and was quite a lengthy thing indeed, but it was 100% questions and answer focused from the official forums. So if you're interested in interesting news of upcoming major additions to the game, you won't really find any of that here. Anyhow, this is made from the help of Iluna Minori and Shinitan, who translated all of this information live as it went out on the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit Discord, so go check that out if you want the latest every time one of these events take place. So firstly, Yoshi P and Foxclon introduce the live letter by saying what a success the Shadowbringers launch has been, with much less critical errors than the previous launches. They are ultimately quite happy with the reviews so far the expansion received, and the Metacritic score over 90 gets mentioned, and landing first position in the PC platform particularly is quite nice. They move directly onto job balance now with the opening questions, and there is a full focus on answering questions on this topic before getting into anything else. To break it down then, ninjas are performing low on DPS. They address then the problem of ninja here being that ninjutsu and mudra combinations are being disrupted by GCD timing, causing clunkiness, that there are too many inputs required to perform rotations for maximum DPS, and that the party utility of trick attack and ninja's total damage needs to be balanced overall. They intend to make major adjustments to these areas before patch 5.1, possibly even in the patch 5.08. They did actually additionally say they considered the idea of reducing from 3 combo paths to just 2 to simplify the inputs, but it just seems to be this is all to be addressed, and a lot of it's in the air. Samurai was mentioned, specifically the level 80 ability Shoha. They acknowledge the skill is hard to use and they actually don't see that much usage of it. They want to address their overall firepower as well, and want to additionally address all of these issues by 5.1. For summoners, they want to lessen the dependency on damage over time abilities. For Ruin, they say the extra effect is what making them see this to be problematic. So by 5.08, they want to make adjustments to that, but they want Ninja, then Samurai, then Summoner to be their priority order in making changes. Bards, they say, increased in playability, but their song utility felt lacking, so they're planning to address that. Yoshida says he knows that people want more from the songs and their utility. The intention of such a change is that they wanted to lessen the dependencies to such utility, yet maintain some of their signature utilities they hold, like battle voice and such. Retaining it all will blur the line between Bard and Dancer, so they made it so that Machinists do the most damage, then Bard and then Dancer. Dancer then, they reaffirm here, is designed to be a buffing class, so their mechanics result in really low damage, but in return buff the other jobs present. Astrologians got adjustments recently in the game to its potency and healing, but the cards felt lacking. They understand that AoE balance is the card that gets used a lot, so they thought they needed to do away with the other cards that don't contribute to the party. They do, however, feel they need to retain the draw card aspects. They have no plans to change the cards at the moment, and have decided to retain the current setup for now. Warrior next, they don't see any adjustments necessary for this job for now. They want to look at voices on Warrior and buff them slightly in the future, so Yoshida is considering expanding the duration of some of their skills. Scholars, Yoshida understands that players want fairy-specific actions to be implemented in the tooltips, so they will do that as soon as possible. Now we move on to more generic questions that take us throughout the remainder of the live letter in sections. Someone asked, can you implement a suitable item level requirement for dungeons, because we have players who come into the dungeon with extremely low item level equipment? Yoshida agrees that this is a problem and is apparently working with the development team on a solution. Someone then asks for future PvP plans and to talk about them. Yoshida says they're working to increase the action numbers up to 16 for the next PvP update. There, they will be giving all jobs some sort of charge action so that they can heal themselves in emergency situations. There will be a new frontline mode added, with more information apparently given later in 5.15. They iterate here that in terms of PvP charge actions, that tanks would get AoE buffs and healers would get AoE heals. Now to questions about storyline, which they confirm here with the spoiler tag contains spoiler discussions, although they are fairly minor in my opinion. When did they first start thinking of building up the plot and development towards Shadowbringers? Yoshida says that since the first appearance of Ardbert and co during patch 3.x, after Elidibus had his combination with Ardbert, is where the scenario team started throwing hints in development throughout and brought them to Shadowbringers. They wanted to resolve the Warrior of Darkness aspects of that storyline. They also wanted to do something about Minfilia. They created a character originally they admit doesn't resonate with players. They note the meme about Prey returns at Waking Sands here, so her popularity in their opinion wasn't very high. They decided to up her importance by sending her to the First and connect her with Ardbert and company, where we then discover about the Sundering and such. They didn't want to immediately touch on this theme though, as they wanted to get all of the story with Doma and Alamigo in Stormblood resolved first. Someone then asks about the implementation of retainer bells and the story with Feowul. They ask where they got this idea. Yoshida wants people to really ask Banri Oda, whom will be attending PAX East, these sorts of questions. However, they explain here briefly how they cannot bring your retainers to the First, and so they needed something to ask as some form of connection and catalyst to the worlds. Therefore, they thought of the idea of a relay through Feowul. Next up, a person compliments the expansion for its extended quality on gestures and cutscene involvement in 5.0. Yoshida is aware of the comments that expressions and gestures have been improved in 5.0 and says they need to put even more effort into providing a better cutscene experience. With the development of the new expansion, a lot more developers entered the team. The cutscene improvements managed to reach this level, and it's entirely thanks to their hard efforts. Next up, someone says, I was touched when I rode the trolley in Amareng and realised it was the same slope as in Horizon. What are some other correlating places between the source and the First? Yoshi simply replies with, I would like to save this question for later on. It's far too early to answer this and there still is a whole 5.x series to come. Okay, a great question here. Will we be able to bring trusts into Msq Dungeons from 5.1 and onwards? They say how much they love the Crystal Exarch in this question and want to fight by his side yet again. Yoshi simply says many people worldwide have been asking for this and the Crystal Exarch is very popular in particular. The development team is discussing 5.0 feedback, but adding new trusts is heavy on the developer costs. They're thinking about letting you do the 8-man trials with trusts or maybe redoing a Realm Reborn dungeons so that you can do them with Grand Company leaders. If they do add these, it'll have to be gradually over time because it takes high-level game designers to implement these sorts of things. As for new Msq Dungeons in 5.1, it will support trusts. If there were more Msq Dungeons in the 5.x series, they will also support trusts, but there isn't necessarily an Msq dungeon in every patch, he says. When doing dungeons as part of the Msq, you won't have to worry about having high-level enough trusts. Next up, oh god, this question. The sandwiches we received in the Msq, were those made by the Crystal Exarch? If they were, then I'm going to preserve them. Otherwise, I'll just eat them whenever. Yoshi just simply says, just eat them. I don't know. Just eat them. I don't blame him, really. Next up, I love Emmett Selk. Are there any plans to extend his past in the story? Who knows, says Yoshida. He can't say. We've shown quite a bit already, but there are some aspects we'd still need to show, such as what happened to the original unsplit world, and so look forward to those. There are a lot of cutscenes in the side quests this time around. What are Yoshida's recommended side quests? He talks for a while but comes to the conclusion that he likes the fairies in Ilmeg. They thought originally they were going to be the second coming of the Mughals and were really scared of that, so there was a lot of tuning to avoid that implication. Ultimately though, he recommends the Dwarven storylines about the dwarf who has issues with greetings, saying it brings the world to life. Next, Yoshi P is asked what his favourite Msq character is in Shadowbringers. After a lot of thinking, he settles by saying that from the new characters I like Runar. The voice actor did a really good job here. We also got to see a new side of Y'shtola thanks to him. The character I was most particular about was Thancred and how his determination should be. There were also a lot of adjustments to his pose when he collapsed, and I thought his scratched up gunblade was really cool. There were also a lot of care and emotion put into Urianger, although when he speaks, the voice actors all did an incredible job, he says, this expansion. Someone says, I love the Shadowbringers background music. Which one took the most effort to create? Just as Yoshida replied that Soken isn't with them today, he was actually passing in the hallway and takes the question live. He says that would have to be the Shadowbringers opening theme, and the first song revealed via the teaser trailer at Vegas Fan Fest last October. Then, in February in Paris, there was a different version of the song, and then another in March, which was actually then used as the release itself. Basically, he says, I had to make 3 versions. Next up, when reading the Encyclopedia Eorzea Volume 2, I found out that the lion statues in the lost city of Amdapor were made by someone from a different world. Is this referring to the Sin Eaters from the first? Yoshi replies, we already had a story planned at the time of making the lore book, so it was planned so that you could look back at it later. I was astonished by the Warrior of Light's imagination when doing the Eden raids. Why did Leviathan and Titan appear in those forms? Yoshi replies the Warrior of Light hasn't done Leviathan since 2.1 and 2.2-ish, so they probably thought there were 2 things attacking, head, tail, and there was water filling from above, and he dived across the deck, and then they got the falling rectangular sections mixed up from another fight, and it ended up like that. As for Titan, the Warrior of Light got a lot of flashbacks of falling, and when they thought about the falling rocks and stuff, it got mixed up with the goblins. Scary stuff. Someone quickly asks, when is the next Beast Tribe coming? To which Yoshida quickly replies, 5.1. Will the crystalline mean be continued in the future, which is the crafting storyline in the Crystarium? Yoshi says that I think it's complete for now, we may expand on it later, but right now there are no plans. The Lahi from Raktika Greatwood is stuck in my head. What are the lyrics about? Soken walks back into the room now. I'll leave it to your imagination. He doesn't know what they mean either, and it just ended up that way. Koji Fox probably forced the Lahi though, some kind of fairy language. Next is a question on Machinist. Machinist Automaton Queen is really cool, but the job quests don't say anything about why it exists. Could you add story related to that, as well as Scholar's Seraph? Yoshi says he can't answer this lore-wise, but the robot was explained as a kind of combination between turret and a striking dummy. Regarding the Raktika Greatwood side quest, the Protectors of the Wood, there is a description of Courls and Namazu, but we haven't seen Namazu in the first. Will they be appearing later? Well, it was 12,000 years ago. In the source, they avoided extinction thanks to the Warrior of Light, so considering what happened to the Warrior of Light in the first, maybe the Namazu weren't so lucky out there. You know those giant beavers? Well, maybe the Namazu got eaten by those and then laughs. No, that's not funny, Yoshi. Nuh-uh. No. The dancer in the opening movie is Raina, right? Will we see a scene of her dancing in artifact gear later? Yoshida says he ordered the storyboards back in September of 2017, and back then they didn't have a new story at all, so it was created based on the new race and job. It's possible we might see that, but I don't know yet. In The Tempest, the field background music plays even during combat. It seems intentional since the large-scale Fate still changed the music. So what was the reasoning behind this? Yoshi says this was for atmosphere. Since it's a silent underwater area, it's kind of the opposite of the other maps. There you're bringing back darkness to the light, but The Tempest starts off dark. This will probably be talked about more at PAX West. Next, someone asks that we can see a tall building in the south in Amarot. Will we be able to go there in the future? Yoshida says, I wonder, and coughs deliberately there. Someone then asks, is there a way to tell dwarf genders apart? Yoshi says there probably isn't, but I don't think you need to. Dwarfs are dwarfs, friends are friends. They're all lovable, all the same, regardless of gender. The next question, what does meal taste like? Yoshi says, I don't know, it probably depends on the person. When I was doing my checks, I thought of it as bread. Maybe sweet bread, since it's so delicious. Okay, now they move on to battle questions. It was asked, due to the new coffer system in Eden Savage, pugs have to fight over every piece of loot now. I'm afraid I won't be able to get any loot because I'm not in a static. Do you have any plans on changing the loot system? Yoshi says, on the other hand, it's also possible to win all of the loot. Probability-wise, the current way is probably advantageous. It's a difficult problem, and I think we'll continue to monitor the situation and feedback for now. For Extreme Primals, since there's so many more jobs there now, it's harder to get the weapon you want. Could you switch to the coffer system like Eden? Yoshida actually discussed this apparently prior to launch, but considering the difficulty level of the content and that you get a guaranteed weapon after 10 kills, we left the system as is. With the world visit system, hunts are now so crowded that I cannot see the enemy. Can you adjust the visibility priority? Yoshi says it's overworld content, so we can't make it homeworld only. Right now it's busy because of the expansion launch and more efficient because of the field instances, but eventually the instances are going away, so I think it'll calm down. Are you going to fix the bug that lets you turn whilst jumping in legacy controls? Right now they say there's a little trick with Dragoon that involves changing direction whilst using jumps. If that doesn't become required to use, then we'll leave it as it is. But if it does, well, we'll have to fix it. But the spinning during normal jumping will stay. Someone asks, I cap on bicolor gems really fast while doing the fates in the new areas. Can you possibly increase the cap? The developers apparently haven't discussed this yet, but since the shop items don't change until you rank up, you end up accumulating gems while ranking up in the various areas, and I do want to address that, he says. Are there any plans to add Viera and Hrothgar to adventurous squadrons? Yoshi says they were too busy to implement it in 5.0, but I think they'll be implemented gradually. Are there any plans to nerf Eureka so that we can get the final Relic weapon in a light party or solo? Yoshi says we're discussing it right now, and we're going to be doing something about it. We haven't decided yet, but possibly some new actions or buffs that will let you play solo. Alright, are there any plans to add in-game FC recruitments and search? Yoshi's answer is that it was mentioned some time before, but they're working on a new system called Circle. These are more casual than link shells, and you can be a part of multiple. They can be used for, say, role-playing events. You sign up and it will show you the date and location, and you can choose if you want to go or not. And you can even receive announcements from it. It doesn't have a chat system because that would be too hard to manage in addition to the other chats, but basically you can join a bunch of them and show up when you feel like it. The system will be explained more in the next live letter for 5.1 Part 1. Next, a question about stubble on the hire in the patch notes and benchmark. They ask if this will be available to players in the future. Yoshida apologizes here and says he wanted to put it in because it's so popular, but points out here it's really quite difficult. There are issues if we change the male hire face patterns, but we are wanting to do it, so we are discussing it, although it will take longer than expected. Are there any plans to add more hairstyles for Viera and Hrothgar? Yoshi says of course we'll add new hairstyles, so please look forward to future patches. It still has to be a race-specific hairstyle, so it won't match the pace of the other races, but there will be more hairstyles added in the future. Next up, a simple question: will there be a deep dungeon in 5.x? Yoshida simply says it's a secret. Now talk about the next Alliance raid for 5.1. It's asked what the gear will be actually like. Are there going to be weapons? It's okay, they say, if it's only for glamour. I would personally love to use the katana in the artwork. Yoshida replies, coincidentally I just checked all of the gear around 2 PM today and it was really well done. Some of it is quite daring because we ended up deciding to make the appearance the same between genders. I'm not sure about the katana, but if there are a lot of requests for it, then we can consider it. Apparently talk of the raid is being reserved for the live letter at the Tokyo Game Show. A quick question was then asked about plans for an extreme mode of the final 5.0 trial, and Yoshida confirms that that will also be in 5.1. Next up, someone asked, the level adjust system of all of the side quests in Shadowbringers was great for leveling. Can you implement it for Stormblood quests as well? Yoshi says he wants to do it, but it would require remaking all of the data. Right now they're working on the new Game Plus feature and going through all of the quests. There's a lot, he says. It would be very difficult to remake all of them right now, but we do plan on cutting down the Realm Reborn quest quite a bit. We are aiming to have that done in 5.3. Can you enable Undersized Party for Raffle Extreme, someone asks? Yes, it is actually in the works now, they say. Now we move on to gathering and crafting questions. Can you tell us about the Ishgard restoration yet? Yoshi tells us this will be covered in a later live letter, although now everyone is asking for Amarot and the Crystarium. Come on guys, this has been in the works for years, he says. I can't change plans so easily, and you don't even know what might happen in the future MSQ. Amarot or Crystarium themed apartments might be nice though. Next, it feels like desynthesis is very expensive to level for not enough return investment. Are there any adjustments planned? There will be changes to gatherers and crafters in 5.1, Yoshi says. For desynthesis, the success rate will be 100%, and the seesawing when leveling multiple classes will be removed. And in general, we want you to use desynth on your extra items more. Right now, it's in a weird situation because it's difficult to level and doesn't give much reward, so we're going to address that. Please wait for more details. Weaver seems to require more materials for intermediate crafts than the other classes. Could you reduce the number of threads required to make cloth, or add a recipe to create cloth directly? They say they're currently adjusting unbalanced recipes, so please wait for that. Next up, it's a struggle when monsters spawn close to gathering point, especially Sweet Majorum in the Raktika Greatwood. Could you make adjustments? Yoshi says stealth will be adjusted in the 5.1 and 5.2 changes. Also, we're currently thinking of making it so that gatherers won't be detected by monsters when riding a mount. There are a lot of changes planned for 5.1 and 5.2, so we'll be going over them in more detail at a later date. So next up, on to system questions. Someone says, I only play battle jobs, so whenever a new raid tier comes out, I'm over-melding materia. I have to ask someone else for that help. But since it's luck-based, it always takes a long time and I feel bad about it. Can you let us over-meld from an NPC? Yoshi says, it's not really what you're asking for, but we are discussing making overmelds faster. Leveling crafters isn't that hard, so we'd rather you do that. It's hard to convey what's fun about crafting, especially to new players, so we actually plan to make changes to get more people to enjoy it. Due to the new jobs, the main hand section of my armory chest is always full. Can you add more slots to the main hand as well as rings? With the current server congestion, Yoshi says it wouldn't be possible to add more slots, just like with adding more housing. We have to make sure the player experience doesn't degrade due to server crashes and whatnot. It's not an issue of database space, but rather that the Warrior of Light carries a ton of stuff around with them, and that data has to be transferred as they move around the world. Adding more data would then be multiplied by every character, which causes server performance issues. We do plan on expanding the armory chest, but it will take some time. Next question, there are a lot of interesting NPC pop-up quotes, specifically in trusts, but they are too small and hard to read. Could you make them bigger and stay on screen longer? Those dialogues are designed to not cause strain on the image rendering, and scaling it would actually cause issues with the process. I do think it's pretty hard to read when playing at high resolutions, so whilst we can't make them adjustable, maybe we can just make them bigger altogether. Someone asked for a fail all as a fairy glamour for scholars, and Yoshi says, would they even listen to your commands? You might even have to solve riddles for 7 days and 7 nights before they'll heal you. I wouldn't count on it. Is then asked if we can have an Esphetition to the Crystarium in-room. Yoshida says this was actually a debate amongst the development team, but the Esphetition wouldn't be available to travel between worlds. There was talk about having Feowall do it, but they wouldn't know the techniques and probably would only know how to do one haircut. Anyway, please return to the source now and then, okay? Can you make it easier to tell if an enemy is physical or magical? Yoshida says this has been answered in the past, but for the benefit of new players, whilst it is possible to do so, it would delay the patches. This is because we're always adjusting raid balance until the last minute. Sometimes we suddenly realize that something being magical gives a certain job a huge advantage, so that attribute can be changed very late in the development process. So we do it this way because we want to get the content to you as fast as possible, not out of ill will. Next, it's asked if you could add voices to character creation for the battle voices. Yoshi says it should be possible, although it will take some time because of the character creation UI is fairly packed, but he would like to have it implemented. Someone then asks if we can get a button to repair all armory chest items at once. He says it shouldn't be deteriorating fast enough to need all of them fixed at once, except maybe the aetheryte earrings. Let's just repair when we can. Next, sometimes I forget to put new skills on my hotbar. Can we get an indicator in the actions list for whenever a skill is on your hotbar or not? He says it's supposed to automatically put new skills on your hotbar somewhere. I guess if your hotbars are currently full it wouldn't. That feature would be a large burden though, since it would have to display on every single skill. Instead, please check your action list and compare the levels with your own. Also, now you can put actions on your hotbar before you've even learned them, so you can actually do that in advance. And the last section of the live letter is actually on items and housing. Are there any plans to add crafted primal weapons for Gunbreaker and Dancer? Yoshi says, sorry, we're putting so many resources into the new patches that we don't have any left to make those. The character team might start working on it in their free time between patches after watching this stream, so I can't say they'll never come, but only that it is possible. Are there any plans to add Shadowbringers NPC outfits to the Mog Station, for example Y'shtola in the Crystal Exarch? I want Y'shtola's outfit, so that will come soon. Please look forward to it. Someone says, can we get dwarf-sized furniture for Lalafels? Yoshi says it should be possible, but he needs to check with the team first. Next up, would it be possible to remove the unique restriction from rings so that we can wear 2 of the same raid or tome ring? Yoshi says he understands that request, but it'd be hard to manage. We could remove a ring slot, but he's very reluctant to do that. Are there any plans for a Novrent housing or apartments? How about a male-shaped house in the empty, he jokes. And the longer you live there, the paler you get. Anyway, we don't really know what will happen to the first later on, so we don't really know yet. Someone asked, can we get more dyes, especially in the pink, purple and yellow categories? Yoshi says we can make the adjustments, but adding might be hard. It's a data transfer issue, but I'll ask the team. It's then asked if we can get a Theowall minion. I thought Theowall would be more decisive, especially because of the way the fairies talk, but everyone seems to like them. A minion will probably be added at some point, so please look forward to it. It's asked, can we get a furniture item to display weapons? Yoshi asked, like a weapon stand? If you want to display your own weapons, it would be hard to get the placement right. Weapons have an attach point that determines whether they go on your character model, but that wouldn't translate well to a furniture item that has to be able to display any type of weapon. We'd have to test it to see if it was feasible or not. Someone asked, can we have a housing feature for minions like the minion square in the Gold Saucer? Yoshi says this has been answered before, but in order to have them move around, they would need to move around furniture, and performance-wise, this is not feasible. We are considering a farm-type content, so please look forward to that instead. Can we get the purple Lakeland trees as outdoor furnishings? Yoshi says, yes, that should be fine. Will the Bayako kimono from last year's FanFest be added as an in-game item? They say they don't really care if they have to pay 2 million gil for it. Yoshi replies, probably not, but you mean 2 million gil, not yen, right? Also, I felt really bad because I intentionally lost 10 kilograms after the kimono order was put in, which ended up causing issues with the fit. And finally, the last question of this Mammoth QA, when will the Shadowbringers OST go on sale? And he simply replies, next year-ish. And that is the end of the enormous live letter Q&A. My goodness, there were some alright questions mixed in with some guff as usual, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Thank you all kindly for watching and listening to this rundown in English. I couldn't really cut it down any further than this, as you could probably imagine, since it's Q&A, so thank you if you did make it this far. Once again, thanks to Eluna Minori and Shinitan on the Reddit Discord team for working their butts off with translation once again in a timely manner. So thank you all kindly for watching, and I'll see you all next time.